I'm Fatheree.
This is Dave.
This is Brian.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
So welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 94th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we talk all about Star Trek all the time. And as they say on Romulus, Jolon True.
Jolon True.
What the shit? What was that one?
That means hello.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Yes.
I started keeping like a glossary of all the terminology in this, which is primarily Romulan. There's so much stuff to learn, and every episode adds like 3 or 4 things.
I do love that we finally have an official Romulan language.
Well,
that I think is fun.
We should say what we're talking about, and that's Star Trek Picard.
Oh, great.
Episode 4, Absolute Candor.
Yes.
And Absolute Candor is exactly what you're going to get in this conversation.
Absolute candor is what you give, Fatheree. That is that is your version of the was it the first rule, first law? What's the episode of Trek that you often use as a touchstone with Wesley?
First duty.
Oh, the first duty.
Yeah,
yes.
That's it. That very much fits your philosophy as a person.
Sure, yeah, I like that.
My philosophy as a person is far more Romulan. I'm duplicitous. Yes. I have a door only to the back of my house, etc.
You're a creature who knows nothing but deceit.
Yes.
I guess.
And I'm going to stab you sometime during this podcast with whatever the name of that sword is.
Why would I want to talk about my life when I could lie?
That's pretty good.
But yeah, we're talking about
I didn't make that up. I found that.
Ton Kalunk. Something like that. I think that's this Romulan sword.
Yeah, you should never bring one of those to a disruptor fight.
I don't know. Our boy in this one does pretty all right with it.
Well, this episode was written by Michael Chabon and directed by Jonathan Frakes. And before we dive too deep into this episode, we're each just going to give a very quick opening statement about our general impressions. So, Brian, if you'd like to go first, and then we'll go down the line.
I thought this was delightful. I loved all the character beats and bits. I think this is my favorite one so far. I love the little plot twists and revelations and character stuff. So, yeah.
I think that I was been waiting for the Romulan bird of prey since the series began, and I finally got it, and so that's what I'm most excited about. But we also got a Romulan swordsman and some other stuff happened. But mainly I was there for the awesome reverb sound effects of its disruptors on an ancient bird of prey. I will say, I realized in this episode I was slightly getting annoyed with the running subplot of Narek and his sister handler. Their kind of meetings feel a little repetitious as of this episode. And
the Romu Lannisters.
Is that what the internet's calling them?
It is.
I like it.
Anyway, #Romu Lannisters.
I felt like that one was just that I had kind of seen it. It was that they didn't feel like they were pushing it forward as much as I might have liked. But by and large, I was happy with the episode, and I love seeing kind of some other planet-side stuff. As well as the more details on this new Romulan faction, which we're going to talk about, and obviously our new swordsman, the Elf,
or better known as Elnor.
Elnor, yeah.
So,
Fatheree?
For me, I would say that this kind of feels like the first real episode of the show. And what I mean by that is I used to always have this philosophy with new shows, especially back when TV was more episodic, that you really don't get an idea for what the show is about truly until the second episode, because your first episode is always going to be like the big setup episode, and you have to introduce the main character, and typically it feels like a pilot and not like a random episode.
Right. A lot of times you're seeing stuff in that'll never be typical for the rest of the series.
Exactly. But then when you get that second episode, it's a better idea of what to expect week to week.
And you're thinking of the 3 episodes as kind of as the movie. It's what they screened for critics and so on. And this is sort of like episode 2.
Yeah. Or like with Battlestar Galactica, the first 3 episodes were the miniseries, and then Absolute Candor was 33 was like the first real episode of BSG.
Yeah, that sounds sounds right.
So kind of like that. But yeah, like I really dug it, and I look forward to see the character Picard continue his mission, and hopefully each episode he gets to do like his own little cool side mission that ties into that bigger story.
He's doing side quests right now in the RPG.
Yeah, but they all kind of like tie into like the bigger story.
Right, it's like in Mass Effect when you have to recruit people and each one of them has kind of side story elements, but it's basically about recruiting somebody before you go up against the big bad.
Yeah, and this was like a recruitment story. We got a new character, and now like the main crew of Star Trek Picard is complete.
You could argue that all the previous ones were kind of recruitment episodes too, or at least episodes 2 and 3.
Kinda. I mean, like, we got Agnes Girardi in the first episode, and then we get Raffi Musiker briefly in the second episode for just like a couple seconds at the end, and then we got Chris Rios in the third episode.
In the first episode, it felt like, in fact, Picard was being recruited by a soon-to-be doomed android. But yeah, he was recruited himself. And then he became the recruiter. Fatheree, you want to go ahead and give us the recap of everything that went down in this episode?
Sure. I'll go ahead and give you the short answer, just like Dr. Girardi gave in episode 1.
Mm-hmm.
Picard now has his ship finally and a crew, but before he goes off to Freecloud to look for Bruce Maddox, he takes a detour to a Romulan colony world. The planet is inhabited by Romulan refugees he was able to relocate to safety before his supernova rescue mission was halted by Starfleet. These refugees include a sisterhood of Romulan warrior nuns, and Picard recruits Elnor, or Elf Boy as we sometimes call him, and he's been trained by these warrior nuns and is a deadly badass himself, and is now sworn to Picard and Picard's mission to save Data's daughter. Oh, and 7 of 9 shows up again.
Father, you got through that whole description without mentioning the Romulan bird of prey. I don't even know why we listened to that. I need the slightly longer short answer.
Yeah. Well, the bird of prey really had very little relevance to the plot here.
Yeah, it's true. It was there to kind of look cool, and I have to admit...
And fan service, it was very fan service.
Sure. I admit I was disappointed that we didn't get to see some on-screen vision or an interior bridge shot of its warlord captain. I feel like he could have added some menace to those scenes, and instead it comes out of warp and starts attacking, which is kind of cool too. But I think I wanted that slightly more personal threat that comes from seeing the bad guy on the big screen.
Well, that is more of a traditional Romulan attack from what we know of, like the Earth-Romulan War and Enterprise and the Deadly Years, where they didn't bother with like on-screen communication.
Since they did know who this warlord was, it was like Qatar or something like that.
Kantar.
What is it?
Kantar.
Kantar.
Which sounds a lot like Kyle Katarn from the other Star franchise.
It's messing with my head. Since they didn't know who he was, or at least Captain Rios did, I almost would have liked to have pull up some data on him or something. But you're right. I think this is probably, honestly, more fan service than it was, like, really plot relevant. So, it's a minor complaint.
Any other Star Trek show would have shown who was on that ship, I think. Yeah. But I don't want to spend too much time talking about the bird of prey, because it actually, didn't play it.
I'm going to hijack the whole episode.
I have to say, the fact that it appears to just come out of nowhere and then get dealt with and doesn't tie back into any of the storylines is kind of irritating. I kind of want 7 of 9 to say, oh yes, the pirate was hired by blah 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 to come in here and kill you, Picard.
Well,
fortunately, I got here in time.
Maybe she'll say that in the next episode.
Yeah. If she says that, then I'm fine with it.
Well, let's break down this episode in more detail.
Okay.
Starting with the very beginning, before the title sequence, we get a prologue. 14 years before the main events of the show, this was around the same time as the synth attack. Mm-hmm. We actually see, like, Picard, when he gets the news of what happened to Mars. Makes it a little weird in Children of Mars when they immediately have on the news Admiral Picard to react to Mars attack. But
right, like as if it happened like within seconds or something.
Yeah, like as if like he wasn't like totally caught off guard, off-world on this Romulan colony of...
could have had FNN beams down suddenly right in front of Picard and stuffs a microphone in his face.
Yeah, just like in Star Trek Generations. But this planet is called Vashti in the Kiris sector, somewhere in the Beta Quadrant. Mm-hmm. And what I think we can assume is former Romulan Star Empire territory.
You know what? First of all, I thought it looked good, and I liked seeing all these sort of traffic in the orbit around it there, just on a purely visual level. That was presumably refugee stuff going on.
I hated that because those are all Discovery shuttles that shouldn't exist in this time.
Yeah, I don't, and usually I don't key in on that. I was just like, it's a busy orbital area, and that conveyed the idea to me of that this place that is a hub of I don't know, action, and. That there was also, there was kind of some interesting new music in there that I picked up on that they used several times throughout the episode to set the tone there. That was a little bit more, for lack of a better word, slightly more exotic music, the kind that, sort of like Middle Eastern marketplace, hinting at that kind of string instrument style. So,
Jeff Russo's score really impressed me in this episode, but not during the prologue stuff, and some other sequences later.
Yeah, and they might not have been in this. They of course, we'll see this planet several times, but for sure it was noticing it on those sequences.
Yeah, I really liked just getting to see Romulan culture and a town and Romulan civilians doing their civilian-y thing.
Wide variety of racial types, hairstyles.
Yeah.
Forehead ridged or not.
Yes.
A suggestion of all the different Romulan eras, I think, right?
Yeah.
I think we kind of glimpsed TNG, TOS, as well as their sort of newer look.
Yeah, like some bald Romulans look very reminiscent of 2009. But we also get to meet the Kowat Malat.
Yeah, this is one of their bigger reveals that the show will have as far as, I guess, the Romulan culture goes.
Yeah, and this is that sisterhood of warriors that teach us about the way of absolute candor.
Yep.
And where they unlike most Romulans, they live in
completely truthful way.
Yeah, complete honesty. And I thought that was it bothered me at first when we see little kid Elnor, who when Picard shows up in his weird white suit.
Yeah, what was up with that?
I hate the civilian clothes on the show sometimes look exactly like modern day clothes, and it bothers me.
It wasn't so much that it looked like modern day as why is he needing in uniform if he's here on Starfleet business?
Patrick Stewart didn't really like wearing a uniform and kind of didn't want to do it, and he only did it for that one scene in the previous episode.
Is this I'm older and I don't look as good in a skin tight sort of uniform?
That's probably part of it.
But I'll say this, I actually liked it. I feel like with him interacting with Romulans who may have a strong distrust of Starfleet, we know they do, that they probably said, hey, if you might even want to dress civilian style. I think you can make an argument. Certainly the entire prequel comic series emphasized how a lot of Romulans do not trust the Federation on this whole evac mission.
But he still has the badge very prominently displayed.
Yeah,
so,
well,
he could stick it under the jacket if he's
can't
really
throw
trying.
everything out. You got it, and plus it looks cool. But yeah, he looked like it was like what do they call it? A Panama suit. It was like a white suit with a white hat.
Yeah.
Had a little bit of that kind of touring American, but also a little bit of an explorer vibe. I think it definitely felt a bit retro, but I thought it was cool.
It bothered me when this little kid asks him, what did you bring me?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, that's really rude and selfish. But then when you learn of, whatever you think, you just say. It makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to blank on her name, but
Zanny,
the head of the Kowat Malat, she says, she's like, Picard doesn't like children, don't bother him. And I'm like, Well, that is true most of the time. But you see that this is a Picard who's clearly softened, and he really has some warmth that he extends towards the kid. But yes, you sort of find out after the fact that some of that initial bluntness was because that is their philosophy.
Yeah, and it's also a Picard who is after his nephew burnt to death in a house fire.
Yeah.
Might
be... he's like, you could be my new nephew.
Yeah, he becomes like the surrogate child to the guy who like regrets not having a family and regrets losing his nephew. Mm-hmm. And this orphan gets a surrogate father.
Yep, and he gets a copy of Three Musketeers, which by a weird coincidence, I'm listening to the audiobook of it right now.
Oh, and that is weird.
I literally, like, the sequence he read is, I know like 2 or 3 days prior, I had heard that sequence.
Is there a Patrick Stewart reading of that book? Because there needs to be.
I don't believe there is. It's a pretty puffy book, so he's going to have to sit down for a few hours. But yeah, he's an enthusiastic reader, and I think he'd probably be pretty good at it.
Yeah.
It's also like very French.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But
he doesn't say Alexander Dumas. He says Alexandre Dumas. You know.
But we get answers to some of the questions we had last week about, like, okay, if the rescue mission was prevented, then how were there some Romulans that were saved? So it looks like the rescue mission had already been in progress, had already started moving some people off-world. He's hanging out here teaching sword play to the little kid Elnor. He gets the news that, okay, there was that attack on Mars. So then immediately after this, you think we'd have like the events we saw in last week's flashback, where they get the news that the ongoing rescue mission is now canceled and Picard has resigned.
Yeah, presumably the sequence that ends that they end with this week, which is him going back to see what goes on, will shortly thereafter lead to the events flashback previously, his last-ditch effort to convince Starfleet to find a way to keep the effort going.
And it makes me wonder if we'll continue to get more of these flashbacks. I kind of like them, and I like this form of storytelling, but we really have all the mysteries resolved now, except for the mysteries that are mysteries of the characters. Like, what was like the Tal Shiar's involvement? What made the Sense go
We
crazy?
don't know what's going on with the Borg.
Right, but like neither do the people in the show. Oh, with like the Borg cube, you mean? Like,
yeah,
that is true. Yeah. So maybe they'll start showing flashbacks of like the Romulan side and like explain like this Borg cube's mysteries.
That's kind of my hunches of where we're going, but
right now,
or like how did Hugh end up there? Because I feel like all the stuff with like Picard and Raffi and the Romulans and Picard's resignation from Starfleet. I feel like at this point we now know all of that stuff, or at least anything that would be necessary.
Elnor's story actually very much parallels the issues that Raffi had with Picard, which is to say, you were once really close to me, then something happened and you got jarred and sent off, you kind of went off on your own, and then you never stayed in contact. It's interesting because it feels sort of realistic to me that Picard is, we talked about this top possibility when we were trying to figure out, or we were doing our list of what we hope to see from the show. It's like, well, is Picard going to be sad? Is he going to be confident? Is he going to be sad regaining his confidence? Or what? But the question was, the growth he showed on Next Generation, was he going to regress? And he clearly did. That is the story that they have decided to tell, which is to say that he kind of lost contact with people. And a lot of them hold kind of grudges over it.
You said the hermit of...
The Hermit of Labar.
Yeah, so the hermits tend to get out much.
Oh, just technical thing. The de-aging effects when we see these flashback with him continue to be good.
Yes.
And you got to see him fencing with the kid in this one, which was fun. Yeah. A little bit of action.
Although I didn't think like the de-aging here looked as young as it did last time. So that was a little jarring, but it wasn't a big deal. He's still his wrinkles were clearly less deep.
Yeah.
I think it might have just been like kind of a lighting thing.
I had a question when I was first watching the episode, and then after it was over, I thought about it for 3 seconds and said, well, duh, that's the answer. But my question was, aren't there any refugee Remans on this planet? And then I thought, oh yeah, the sun's up. They probably come out after the sun goes down, but we don't, except for the one Firefly book reading scene, we get nothing after the sun's gone down. So there are probably Remans all over the place, but we're just not seeing them.
I would be fine if all the Remans got cooked in the Nova.
Well, there were a bunch of Remans.
Well, let me see if I can phrase that right. You would be fine if all the ethnic minority Romulans died.
Yes.
Since they're all like fictional people and don't matter, then sure, yeah.
Having a Riemann wander by in the background on the
That'd be
Borg
nice.
cube would be a
That
where they've
would
got
be
all
a
these
good use,
Yes.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
I will be disappointed if we make it through the whole season without one use of the word Riemann.
Yeah, let's get a hashtag running there.
Yeah,
Hashtag where's the Raymond?
Yeah,
hashtag Riemann representation.
Yes.
Yeah.
One last thing about the prologue. That was kind of silly that Picard had a Bluetooth thing in his ear just so they could have like this convenient one-sided conversation with him and Raffi, but...
Oh, did he? I thought he was just holding his communicator up to
he
his ear.
tapped his ear.
Oh, okay. I wasn't...
But whatever.
Yeah.
The show is going to do like the more convenient things and not do the adherence to how the technology traditionally works things. But
I was impressed that they had a Romulan... The Romulan senator later on has a comm badge just like Starfleet that he in the same spot as Starfleet. I was like, that's a very Starfleet way to do your communicating, Mr. Romulan. I'm not sure if I approve of it being that Starfleet, but
maybe they had like some Starfleet tech to get them on their feet and stuff like that, and they had to kind of pick up some Starfleet ways, making them all the more bitter.
Bajorans had comm badges also, so it's not Starfleet exclusive.
No, but even they put them on the other side of the uniform just to shake it up a little bit.
To remind us they were different and alien.
Exactly, which is why they should have done it with the Romulans.
But let's talk about like Picard's mission on board the La Sirena. The ship changes course, and instead of going to Freecloud, they're going to the planet of Vashti, and we learn that the Kira sector is actually full of crime.
Yeah,
and
there's something. What are they calling them? What kind of the Fenris Rangers or something?
The Fenris Rangers.
Yeah, they're trying to sort of keep order in it. That sounds a little.
It does.
Babylon 5-y.
Yeah,
only because they trademarked the name Ranger for space.
Go Fenris Rangers!
I do feel like we're getting an idea that as you might expect, the destruction of the Heartland sector of Romulan space has apparently caused the Star Empire to largely go to hell. And while there are some Fenris cops running around trying to maintain some sort of order, it's also clear that there's more space and colonies than there are Fenris to go around.
Right.
And there's pirates, and there's
exciting things.
Yes.
We needed a little bit of lawless space.
Yes. It is I approve of the fact that it's kind of a mess.
That's quite likely why Raffi was like, "What the hell are you doing going there?" She did not approve of this little side quest.
It also adds to Picard's burden for not managing to find a better solution to this problem.
What did y'all think of that initial conversation between Rios and Dr. Girardi?
The why view the negative? We should have it be this vast area of lots of stuff. I laughed my ass off at that.
Does she come off as annoying, or is she like fun and relatable?
I liked her. I like her a lot. I wasn't really sure what they were going to do with her, and then after watching this episode, I was like, oh, she's fun. She's artillery or whatever. We need more of her in scenes. I like.
She's
that.
definitely like when I started to think about this. She sort of has a kind of a blunt way of talking and a sort of nervous way of talking. She clearly likes to be around people, although that could also be if she ends up being a traitor. Who knows? That's a kind of wild theory, but she's also asking a lot of compulsive questions to get information.
Yeah.
But the way she's doing it and the way she kind of views things in a slightly literal way and kind of talks that way. She bluntly tells him that his book sounds boring, and this is talking to Captain Rios.
She didn't say it sounded boring. It sounded like
she's like, well, I really do want to talk about the existential crisis.
Well, it sounded like she didn't really want to have like a deep, dark conversation like that. Like,
right.
That's kind of like a mood killer, is how I interpreted it.
But I felt like she had a certain engineer vibe, and I don't. She's like a roboticist, not an engineer per se. In fact, I guess they were forbidden from doing practical application stuff. But it sort of felt reasonable that a personality like that would kind of come from what she's done.
Yeah, she's like a tech nerd.
Yeah.
That conversation, though, about, as Chris Rios put it in describing his book, the existential pain of living with the consciousness of death. That did get me thinking, what if Chris Rios died and the version that we're seeing is like a hologram of like he like transferred like his memories into the ship, And that's why there's all these other holograms that look like him. It's like different fragments of his personality.
We
haven't seen him off the ship, have we?
Yes.
We assume he's the main guy, he's the one guy, but he's the one real one, but maybe not.
Oh.
But I do remember, like, when they did, like, the initial casting call, and we first started getting some of the descriptions for these characters, there was a call for, like, an ex-Starfleet guy, who eventually became Chris Rios. But they were also looking for a character to play an emergency medical hologram. Maybe a newer version than like the Doctor from Voyager.
It's interesting.
And it made me wonder, what if they combined their hologram character with like their ex-Starfleet character into Chris Rios? But I don't know, that's just my theory. If we ever see him off the ship, it will disprove that.
But it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, maybe he goes off the ship at Freecloud. I didn't watch the trailer for next week, so I guess we'll find out next week if that holds any water or not. But it would be a little weird if I don't want everyone on this show to have this crazy twist where if they're like, oh, Dr. Girardi is actually a AI herself, or some secret agent of Maddox or of Commodore O or something, and then also have Chris Rios is actually a guy who died and now he's a hologram. And
I think we're going to get at least one more surprise AI, because they keep hinting there are more of them out there and we need to find them. So somebody's going to turn out, maybe not one of Picard's crew, but somebody somewhere is going to turn out to be an AI.
Somebody is a Cylon.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I'm sure, because they keep saying there's more of them out there, and I bet there's going to be a whole lot more of them. Not 5 or 6, but hundreds or maybe even more than that.
I Shazammed the music that was playing when Dr. Girardi walks in on him. The band is called Cabarets and Matadors. The song was called There Must Be a Way. Now, I have no idea if it has any relevance, having looked at it to see if it was purely instrumental or if there was any music. But it was kind of a catchy little laid-back tune, so I'm gonna look into it.
Before we move on too far, having a big reveal about what got him thrown out of Starfleet, at least unless they were lying about that, and having the reveal that he's a holodeck might be one too many reveals for a character.
Unless it was the same things. He talks about his captain died on some mission, and they classified his ship. Yeah. So if he had died there too, and came back as a hologram, and then being a hologram, he's kind of like a ghost. And he's wondering if he's real or not, and that's why he's reading the type of literature that he's reading.
I mean, he wouldn't be going to the trouble of having somebody pull a hunk of metal out of his shoulder, unless he doesn't know he's a hologram.
But no, that could have all just been a dog and pony show for when Picard came on board the ship.
It's a pretty weird dog and pony show.
He did do that initially, right when Picard came on board, and then he didn't want the hologram to patch him all the way up after the shrapnel was removed. And
it would make sense. He seems to be irritated by these personalities, which is kind of weird because you would presume he programmed them or whatever. But if he's kind of at odds with himself, which is a very sort of fitting thing for somebody dealing with existential angst, that could be why they annoy him. He annoys himself.
The personalities might have come pre-packaged and he just overlaid his image and voice onto them too. He might be stuck with the personalities because that's a little beyond his programming ability.
We know that he fucking hates that hospitality hologram.
Right. It was another F-bomb in the Trek pantheon.
Yeah. Which I don't think we need to call those out anymore because it's happened half a dozen times in 3 different episodes on 2 different shows. So yeah, Star Trek's just the place where they say fuck sometimes.
Yeah.
So get over it.
Yeah, and I don't think we need to. So
I would agree.
We'll just fucking.
I didn't even notice it this time.
Yeah, it sounded very natural. But that hospitality hologram, this one has an American accent, so it continues to give each one a different accent.
I was reading somebody's, I think, recap of it, and I think they're a slightly dodgy American accent or something like that.
On this holodeck, we get the recreation of Picard's study from back home at the vineyard. So they can continue to reuse the set.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I like that. I kind of want Picard to be in space now, and going back to that set just makes me feel like we're going backwards and looking in the wrong direction.
Give him a recreation of his old ready room.
Now that would have been fun.
I did like the conversation in there between him and Raffi when he's trying to explain to her why this is important. When she's trying to talk him out of no, don't go here. We gotta. What did she say? Oh, it's what we used to tell each other. One impossible thing at the time, and we gotta keep we got to stay on course, stay on mission. And I know that you're guilty about the kid. And then he tells her, Raffi, I may not pass this way again.
Yeah, see, that was when it suddenly made sense to me. Why? Because he didn't mention it earlier. His plan to go out and save Data's daughter or whatever was probably significantly altered contextually when he heard, oh yeah, you're getting the mind mess up and your brain's going to go in Irumodic syndrome or whatever. And that probably changed. This is my last chance to get my bucket list done.
The clock is
ticking. Yeah. This is not just save Data's daughter. This is
save my soul.
This is my last mission.
Yeah.
So is there any? I always meant to go back and see this kid, and I could use a little muscle, and that's my rationale for justifying the.
Arguably, it's a kind of like something that might be very time sensitive. It's a particularly bad time to indulge your guilt, but I think he does genuinely think. He needs this. He also needs this badass.
Yeah, I think that was a good justification, and I also like the idea of reminding the audience that he does have this ticking clock, and that, I guess, when you do get that old, you do have to start thinking about, this might be my last opportunity to do this.
Yeah.
Might be your last opportunity to hire a kid ninja.
Though he didn't actually know the kid was still there until he got there. He was looking for one of the female assassin nuns.
Right, that's true.
So...
Yeah, but
he was hoping to make some peace with the kid if he was there.
But Rafi knew that was about the kid too, though. So he
all right.
He was expecting to see Elnor on this colony. Somewhere.
Okay, because he also seemed surprised. What, you didn't find a proper family for him? No, you kind of dropped him on us and ran away. Oh yeah, I guess.
Well, maybe he was expecting to see adult Elnor, maybe in college at home with his new family, across the street. Somewhere else, this little colony town.
I suppose, yeah.
But let's talk about the colony, Vashti. When they arrive, it has that weird security with all the drones, even though Romulans don't like artificial intelligence, but they still have drone security.
I guess drones are a little ways out from AI.
Even though all their computers only do mathematical calculations.
I mean, those are basically just floating guns.
Okay.
But a drone just means it can be remotely controlled.
That's what I was
most
thinking.
of our drones are controlled by organic people in real time.
That's what I was thinking. That maybe it's how we do with our real life military stuff. We have somebody controlling a drone from
See it.
And it also seemed I guess if the Star Empire has gone to hell this badly, you probably need all these defensive just to protect you from crazy gratuitous pirates in ancient warships.
What was weird is that when Picard gets there and you see the Romulans only sign, which obviously is a callback to segregation in the United States, I guess, as well as other places where you would see whites only. But yeah, Picard's oh yeah, this colony really went to shit, and he catches up with Zani and the Co-op Malat, and then Rafi is Picard, you're blowing up on social media. Everyone is tweeting about this. You're trending right now.
And not in a good way.
Yeah, not in a good way.
It was kind of funny. You're paraphrasing, but that's pretty close to what it was.
Yeah, that's how I took it.
And when he walked by one of those cafes, somebody spotted him. They talked into a communicator. Clearly, channels were buzzing around it. But yeah, it was kind of funny.
And he was a little standoffish when they're oh shit, the bird of prey just showed up. We got this badass over here. Neil deGrasse Tyson thing. Looks like we got a badass over here. But, not sarcastically. They're oh no, this is Candor. And Picard's just you do what you need to do. Picard out.
What's he gonna do? I mean,
yeah.
He can't. He can only beam up if the window's right. He's probably not going to be able to give them any decent tactical advice from the surface without being able to see any of the displays.
Do the Picard maneuver.
Well, yeah, that only works if they don't have subspace sensors, which it is an old ship, so that might have actually worked now that I think about it.
I think it's a retrofitted old ship, is what I assume. But.
Yeah.
I don't know, given how these smaller ships were able to inflict significant damage on it indicates that at least its shields hadn't been updated in 100 years.
Just a reminder that this Picard can be a little cranky at some times.
Yeah. Well, what was he going to do?
I think, if nothing else,
I felt like he should have been oh my god, do whatever you need to do, keep yourselves safe.
Right, he did not express a grave concern over the Warlord's attack ship. that was threatening his friends, who he pulled her in to help him out, and he's on a mission of trying to alleviate guilt. You would think that he would be a little more concerned about killing somebody else off and building up more guilt.
His Romulan caretaker said, "Go pick some people for this mission that you don't care if they die," and he did. So.
That guy was paraphrasing and putting it in his own words.
It was pick people that don't care if you die.
Yeah.
But I'm with you, Fatheree. I kind of would have liked to have seen him at least, be more concerned. Sort of feel like, okay, I need to haul ass on what I'm doing.
It didn't necessarily bother me. I just thought it was kind of interesting that like this Picard can be like a little bit of like a grumpy old man.
Yeah, he can. We've seen him be cantankerous. Arguably, that's what set in motion his rift with Starfleet. His interview, he couldn't keep it in anymore.
But let's talk about like meeting Elnor when he sees that he's still here with the Co-op Malat.
Yeah, the Co-op Malat. Do you think we're going to get any more of them now that we're off at this point, aside from Elnor?
I don't think that they're going to be major players. Right. We might cross paths with them again.
Because they talk about how their philosophy is diametrically opposed to traditional Romulan philosophy.
Yeah, and they're the enemies of the Tal Shiar.
So they must be must have, at least in the past, have been an underground movement. Or because the Tal Shiar just would have, squashed them.
Or if they had like their own planets that they were in control of, or like maybe if like the government had some type of like separation of powers between them. Like I don't know if they'll ever like go in like full explanation for it, but I do like this idea of like there's this ancient order of these Romulan badasses that are against the Tal Shiar.
It's a neat idea, and to me more because their philosophy opposes common Romulan wisdom.
Yeah,
and I think that's interesting. It's a good addition. To juxtapose this, I don't particularly remember any additions to the Klingon mythos from Disco Season 1 that I was like, oh, that was neat. But I probably hit like half a dozen additions to the Romulan mythos in here that I've either thought that's kind of cool or very cool.
Yeah, and I love the order. When the Star Empire was at the height of its power and the Tal Shiar had the entire empire living in fear, how did these people interact with that? Were they just such a noble, sacred thing that they got special perks?
I could see an argument.
Were they like Spock's underground movement or Shinzon's underground movement where they kind of had to work in hiding?
And maybe now that the Empire's in disarray, they can kind of be more public.
Yes.
Let's talk about like Elnor himself and how...
He has an Australian accent.
Well, he's an Australian actor. He doesn't really have much of an accent, I didn't think.
It threw me off just a bit when something would come out Australian. And this is purely, we're very used to British accents. This is also a very minor complaint, but it did throw me a little.
I've seen him in like interviews and stuff, and he definitely like downplays his accent to like a more neutral Anglo accent than...
I think there were times, I think when he like came out to defend Picard in the cafe or something like that, where I was like, oh, it came through pretty strong there.
Yeah.
Anyway, doesn't have much to do with his character, though, who I liked.
And he should have a little bit of, like, a different exotic type voice.
Sure.
Because he's a different exotic type character. The idea with him is that he's been trained to be one of these Co-op Malat warriors called the Kolankai, or Free Blade, I guess is the translation. Mm-hmm. But he can't really be one because, like, they're all women in this order.
Yep.
But the idea is that you can go to one of these people and... if you have a worthy cause, they will, quote-unquote, bind their sword to your mission and will serve you on that quest.
A worthy lost cause.
Yes.
Which I loved. I was like, that's great.
Am I correct that they kind of kept that... They didn't tell you that it had to be a lost cause until near the end of the episode.
Yeah.
Yes. That was sort of almost like the punchline. That was why Picard was like, I think he's going to be interested. Which is, when you rewatch it, is pretty funny.
Yes.
I actually, I have my friend Anna, who's been on the podcast before. She was really into this episode, and she likes the sort of warrior sects and things in fiction. So she was Romulan warrior nuns, and this guy really added something to her. And I do think there is something kind of cool about Trek occasionally having somebody who is a physical combatant, like Worf, or Kirk and even Spock and those guys were pretty good when it came to a dust-up.
And like myself, Anna is also familiar in the ways of absolute candor.
Yeah, I'd say that's a fairly reasonable assessment.
That's why I like her more than you.
I'll Romulan stab you in the back for it later. I don't even need to react now.
But the I like the conversation between Picard and Elnor. I like that he was like, "Oh, so how does this work? Like, do you have to get on my knees or anything? Because my knees aren't what they used to be." I like whenever they remind us of his age and like that frailty that comes with that. But Elnor's like, "No, you tell me a story," and then I love the line, "Usually a sad story."
And then he immediately follows it up with, "He died."
With Data's death.
Yeah. I had a friend named Data. It needs to be a sad story. He died. Yes.
You know what I like about this Romulan sect and what Elnor is going to bring to it? He's an interesting challenge, I think, to the writers. If he's going to always be candid, if he's going to always say what he speaks the truth, then he's going to be a constantly interesting foil when people are trying to tiptoe around things. He's going to be the guy who bluntly says the elephant in the room. He's also going to mean that it's harder for them to be dishonest around each other. Like, it's an interesting writer's challenge, I think.
Yeah. He's kind of going to be the Spock of the show. He's going to be like the one who's like the most alien. Or like the Odo or the Saru.
Yeah.
He is the character who's going to be like the most alien person in the crew. And it's going to be like this... even though we've seen Romulans before, this is still going to be like a new culture and a new kind of like outlook on life that we're going to get in Star Trek Picard, which every Star Trek show really tries to like make a contribution like that through one of their characters.
He's also unlike I suppose the cyberneticist
Agnes Girardi.
Yeah, Agnes. Aside from her, he's also pretty inexperienced, I suspect. He's never left the planet. He's never lived, quote unquote.
And he did kill casually, which caused Picard to say, "Look, you're going to have to do that only when I say so."
Yeah, but I'm expecting we're looking at a very hyper-specialized character who has no real points in social skills or streetwise or any of those other things.
It's a very role-playing game way to think.
Yeah.
He's going to be a fish out of water.
Yeah, and I think that'll be fun.
Yeah. He's visually cool looking. Like, the actor does, we've joked about it, but he does kind of have that Legolas vibe. And Legolas was the supreme badass of the Lord of the Rings movies.
And I think after 50-something years, Star Trek can finally go full elf with a Vulcanoid, and it's okay. I think we've earned it.
Yeah. And it's a weird thing, but like me as a little kid, I was really intrigued by Romulans, but it's kind of more inspired by the original series Romulans, where they're a bit more of like a warrior culture, and some of that kind of got transferred to the Klingons in Next Generation. But the Star Trek show that I imagined as a little kid was it was going to have like a warrior Romulan type badasses like this. So it's so weird for me to see this, especially when one idea I had was
does it feel like the fulfillment of some childhood hopes and dreams?
Yes, because I also wanted to see like a 23rd century bird of prey come back. Yeah. And I can't believe that happened also.
I've done that in my role-playing game, in my 24th century Trek game. So I've twice, I think. So,
Father and Brian, I've got a question. They made a point to have him mention when he's talking about Data that he knew that Data had a cat named Spot. He remembers it from Picard talking about it back in the day. And he wants to see a cat one day. Yeah. Do you think we're going to somehow see a cat? That felt like
the same question.
Or a Cation, maybe? I actually thought a Cation would be awesome.
We've kind of got a Chekhov's cat thing going where we have to pay off this cat thing.
I didn't see it as something that needed to be paid off, but I did like that line.
I don't think it needs to, but it's a nice bit of color.
Yes. It reminded you that like this guy had like this childhood relationship with Picard, and it really tied this 19-year-old Elnor into the 8-year-old Elnor, even though I know that doesn't work out for 14 years, but that's what I think the actual ages of the actors are.
Right.
But it tied that together because like when he said like, I remember he told me stories of Data. He had an orange cat named Spot. That sounds like a kid's memory.
Right.
That's something that like a kid would think when they're a kid and then maybe remember that into adulthood.
Right. Picard was probably telling him these nuanced morality plays about his adventures, and he's like, I remember there was a cat named Spot.
An orange cat. An orange cat.
He showed me a holo. He was really cute. I want a cat. So.
But I'm hoping for cat payoff.
Yes.
I will not be sad if there's not.
And then we get more of the absolute candor when Elnor is kind of pushing Picard. He's kind of grilling him a little bit. When he's like, no, tell me why you need me. Why you need me specifically. Mm-hmm. And I love this writerly dialogue that they put in the show that really works well for Picard, and Patrick Stewart can deliver it very well. But when he says, because I'm an old man and you are a young one. And this show has a lot to do with like age and maturity and like the growth that we all go through life.
Right.
And
Picard is the kind of, I mean, both Patrick Stewart, the actor, and Jean-Luc Picard, the character, are the kind of person who can say something kind of rather dramatic and succinct like that.
Yeah.
And that's, by the way, that was a very Coat Millat thing for him to say.
Yeah.
no,
I like that's part of the reason this is my favorite episode so far is all these little moments like that
they felt thematically integrated.
Yeah, and I just like the character stuff. I just like getting to see Picard do a lot of different things from an acting perspective.
I liked seeing him throw down the Romulans only sign.
Yeah, what was up with that though?
He was ready to make he was just like, I think he was like an old person who cannot keep their opinions to themselves was just like, fuck.
But he also Elnor rejected his offer.
Yeah,
because he tells him, "You left me alone, old man. I don't see any reason why I shouldn't do the same to you." And so I think he was kind of doing that to like.
Oh, but do you think he prompted it?
I think he
fucking him.
I think he kind of wanted to manipulate Elnor.
Oh, I didn't get that. All right, that makes that's.
I think that could be true, but I also think because I don't know quite what he expected to happen other than a confrontation is a pretty reasonable thing to expect.
He was definitely starting some shit.
But I think my instinctive interpretation was more that he was bit like angry and upset over that conversation and that things had gone wrong. And so he's like on his way out and he just kind of does something instinctively. It feels a little duplicitous of him if he's trying to start a fight.
See, I can't...
That feels like something Kirk would do, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah, but I think I like Fatheree's version better than just he felt like starting some shit and that he probably couldn't finish.
Well, actually, I don't think he was necessarily...
It was a Ben Sisko move. It was a Ben Sisko move is what it was.
Yeah. I don't necessarily think he was like wanting to start a fight. I think he was probably thinking, I will beam up shortly thereafter. Yeah. But...
And to be fair, maybe he would have been able to talk his way out of it, stalled him long enough to beam up. Because Elnor, is that how you say it?
Yep. Yes.
Just walks up and suddenly it's back to fighting again. But Picard throws the sword down and maybe he's like, I'm a level 20 diplomat. I can bullshit this guy for 3 minutes and then I'll beam up. So
yeah, everything is an RPG lensing for you.
So I've spent entirely too much time running role-playing games.
I did like that the guy that confronts him is not just some hooligan, but a former senator who even has some memories of Picard and has built up some bitterness over the years.
Tenkel Madrev is his name.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm definitely never going to remember that again for the rest of my life.
I was like, wow, because there's nothing remotely senatorial about him in his current presentation. He looks like a street thug.
Yeah, we've had 15 years to not be senatorial.
Yeah, it was
14 years.
14,
all right.
We know how far the Romulan Empire has fallen.
Yes.
When he's like, oh, I stood in the Hall of State when you gave your epic speech and all that stuff, and now he's kind of like a thug walking around with a sword, unlike like this crime town in his segregated Romulan only restaurant.
I like that the disruptor had a handguard on it, just like the old military disruptors from TNG.
Yeah,
that was a nice touch that they kept that part of the design.
And I think part of like Picard like being such a shit starter here is. When he is angry and frustrated here, and he probably feels a bit responsible for like the decay of this Romulan colony, and also feels more than anything, I would think, disappointment that things here didn't work out better, and that science as Romulans only. That's kind of just like punching him in the face of like everything that he didn't want to happen here, and so that's why he was so like disgusted with it and threw it down and literally walked over it.
Yeah.
When we saw in the flashbacks, right before they recalled him, and he's talking to Zani, is it? And he's very excited. He's like really thankful to her for helping. They brought in like 250,000 refugees, and he's like he felt enthusiastic. So yeah, coming back and seeing this, I can see why he'd be bitter. We also will see after the very dramatic rescue by Elnor.
We gotta talk about that fight. We gotta talk about like the quick swiftness, efficiency, like the clinical instant kill move that he did.
Yeah.
It told us so much and so little, and we
He was somebody playing the Street Fighter game who knew how the controls worked.
he knew how to do the combos.
Yeah.
He wasn't a button masher.
Yeah, the other guy was a senatorial button masher.
It tells us a lot about the character very quickly, and it's showing, not telling, which is what I said. Like I want the show to continue to do. The dialogue there too, when he gives them that cool warning where he says, "Please, my friend, choose to live."
Yeah,
that's like a really cool badass thing to say because like I am a.
It sounds gracious, but you're also threatening.
Yeah, it conveys confidence, threat.
At least the concept of a brotherhood,
and like concern.
Yeah,
and kind of a like generosity.
Right. He is not a angry killer. He's impetuous, maybe, but he is not a bitter or bloodthirsty person in and of itself. I also wanted to mention that after this happens, Picard gives a very sort of heartfelt speech to the Romulans that have assembled to watch it, which is the speech of failure. He acknowledges his complicity in failing them, and it's the kind of thing that politicians generally don't do. But Picard
he takes ownership.
He takes ownership. Now you could again argue he doesn't have anything to lose at this point. He's retired. But I don't believe that was what it wasn't intended. He's never been intended to be a guy who does things very much for political gain. No.
Because it goes back to the first duty, the Next Generation episode when Boothby taught him. So we all make mistakes.
Yeah, he has to. He owns up to it. And that's that sort of idealism is why I can be content with them showing a Starfleet that's sort of fallen, because I feel like the ideals are clearly represented by the show and its heroes,
Yeah. Complex, not compromised.
Right.
Yes. I like that Picard took Elnor.
I always want to say Elsinore. Yeah, that's Hamlet.
To task about his violent solution afterwards.
I love that too. As soon as they beamed up, as soon as they got away from the Romulan crowd, and he scolded his ass.
Yeah, he did.
Like that man did not deserve to die. Don't you ever do that shit again.
Yeah. He was pretty hardcore about it.
And I was kind of like, he probably did deserve to die, but this is the Star Trek we love. This is the, be the better man Star Trek that we all tune in to see. So I loved it that Picard is still elevating things.
But this also explains Elnor's relationship to Picard, where now that he's sworn to him, now that he's accepted Picard and Picard's mission, it's like he's kind of gonna obey him, kind of like a samurai and his master.
Right.
Now, we have the space battle with the bird of prey.
Mm-hmm.
And the best part of this for me was not only seeing that bird of prey close up. If you notice though, it is textured a little differently, so I think this is kind of like the motion picture era Romulan ship, where how the Constitution got its refit, and then the Klingons went from the D7 to the more detailed Katinga.
Yeah.
I think it was the Romulan answer to that.
I like that idea. Yeah. I mean, of course we would also expect them to spruce it up anyway, just because the FX guys do that. But I like that idea.
If the Romulans had shown up in the motion picture, I think this is what their ship would look like.
Yeah. Still very recognizably the classic ship, but retrofitted.
But the other highlight was the tactical hologram Emmett.
Yeah. Was he sort of more tatted up?
He was tatted up, and he had long hair, and he spoke exclusively in Spanish with subtitles, and he was so extremely...
He seemed burned out.
He was casual.
Yeah.
And he seemed like he
almost looked like he might have just polished off a bottle of tequila and been kind of are we doing this?
So where I live in Central Texas is I know some Latino metalheads that go to a lot of concerts, hide, and they're pretty like laid back like
you
this.
You feel like this is them?
Yeah, I feel like they got their representation in Star Trek with Emmett, the tactical hologram. But if you're going into battle, you want someone who's going to be chill and not getting all worked up.
Right. Incidentally, I thought that the battle itself, it's not a super exciting battle. They didn't really play up too much how much danger they were in. It was almost a kind of a cool FX scene and just a cool skirmish, really.
It was cool how they blasted off that nacelle, but then the bird of prey was she was still in the fight and it got some more disruptor shots off.
Well, it took out the ship that
we find out
brings in our mysterious guest.
Yes, that we find out 7 of 9 was on, which looked a little bit like the Delta Flyer. A little bit, it had a kind of a similar profile, but It was a weird, like, little small, probably like a little bigger than like a
it seemed
shuttlecraft.
Like a single fighter ship.
Runabout or something.
Like between like a shuttlecraft and a runabout, I think.
Yeah. Which at first I was like, how's that little ship dishing out enough damage to hurt this big ship? And I thought, well, this ship's got 100-year-old shields, so
she may have some cool overclocked stuff in there. Who knows how tough that particular little ship was. Although she was clearly flying it a little bit recklessly if she also got tagged, so relatively easy.
So were you guys all like, oh, that's so 7 of 9 in that shuttle, or were you like, holy shit, that's 7 of 9?
I knew it was coming because I saw in the title sequence when it showed special guest star Jerry Ryan.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
And then when they were like, he's opening a channel. Oh, he wants to beam on board. I was like, oh, it's probably going to be her, and that's why they're saying he twice.
Okay.
When they were making a bit of a mystery over who it was, I was like, it's 7. That was when I guessed it.
I have to admit, I didn't. I knew she was in the show at some point, but I was totally until the transporter beam faded away. I was like, oh, it's 7 of 9. Okay.
Is she with the
totally
she with the Fenris Rangers?
Yeah, that's what I've been told. That like they've said that somewhere. They've confirmed it.
Oh, really?
So I guess that was like a
I didn't think that
Ranger
until just
ship.
now.
Oh, all right.
But
okay.
With this moment when we see her beam over, like even though like I knew it was coming, I had figured it out. It reminded me of the very first moment of the show when it opens on the Enterprise D in Picard's dream, and we see Data and Picard playing poker. Because like that made me like so giddy and like jump up and down and cheer childishly.
Yeah.
Which I don't typically react all like fanboyish like that to stuff I'm watching, even like when I'm like really emotionally moved by it. But here, when I got to see Jerry Ryan as 7 of 9 again, it got that same reaction from me.
You did a little backflip in place.
I didn't flip, but
I was very happy, and I don't really like Voyager, but I was still happy. So it was well done.
And she was the best character on that show.
I like Doc Holodeck more, but she was easily second place.
And I'm a Janeway fan, and I like the hologram, and I like 7, but I was super happy to see her. I think she will add one more interesting component to the show. Do we yet know? Is she like going to join the crew, or is she just going to be there in passing?
She's not in every episode of the season.
Okay.
She's listed in the credits as a special guest star.
Okay.
But
so she's maybe going to advise?
In the Ready Room episode, they say she's going to be around.
Yeah, she's going to be a recurring character, but not a regular character.
What's interesting is it almost feels like she'd be more appropriate in the Borg sequences on the Borg cube.
Well, she's going to get there eventually, because like in those trailers before the show started, we see her like finding like a mutilated Borg.
Yeah.
And she's like crying, she's like all sad about it.
I guess that's probably, when things are going to, of course, come together, Picard's story and the Borg cube story will intersect, because that's where his goal is, to get there.
Well, all we get from her here is like, you owe me a ship, Picard, and then she passes out.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to start off next week with the emergency medical hologram, like maybe like nursing her back, and then we'll probably get some information from her, maybe find out what these Fenris Rangers are all about.
She could also, in that dialogue, they could bring out a little bit more about his hologram stuff if they choose to tell more of that story.
They could also have a gag where the EMH is all like, and this person doesn't want me to remove the hunks of metal inside them either.
They, and of course she's had experiences with EMHs.
Yes, she does, actually. That's true.
Now, that's pretty much everything that happens with the La Sirena crew.
Mm-hmm.
So that means it's time to talk about Soji on the Borg cube. Yeah, but we get some more Borg Romulan shit here with Soji and Narek. The thing that I thought was interesting was that Soji has a framed picture of her and Daj.
Okay.
So at one point they must have been around each other.
Mm-hmm.
We also find out that the ship that she was on that brought her to the cube was 3 years ago.
Right.
And there wasn't a record of her being a passenger on there. So this does fall in line with what we found out a little bit about Daj, where there was no record of her from previous to 3 years. So
right, so they had to have been built within the last 3 years.
If they're twins, if they were created at the same time, because that's how that reproduction process works, then they would have came out 3 years ago.
I was honestly, I feel like the motivations and the sort of what's going on in the Borg cube is getting a little hazy for me. What exactly, like, Narek wants to find out, we know from behind the scenes, him talking to Rizzo, is it? Is that the only name we know her by yet? His sister. That they ultimately want to kill her, but they want to get to this hive? Is that what their nest? Is that what
they're calling it the nest, but I think that's just what because they're so disgusted with these synthetics that's what they're gonna.
Now he doesn't want to push her too far, or she'll activate. Is what he said.
And then they'll have to kill her.
She'll
start kicking everyone's ass.
But he brought up in this episode, doesn't he bring up that there's no records before then? So is he trying to have her kind of slowly come to the realization that she's synthetic? But not suddenly.
He planted a seed, as he described.
Oh, that's right. That's the term that they use.
He's waiting for her to. He's trying. I think the intent here is that he's trying to embed this mystery into her. She's a very curious person to where she'll go and figure it out,
right?
And then
he can manipulate her from there.
He'll get the information. He'll know it. But now he's also going to have to hurry because Rizzo said, "Okay, you have one more week, and then we're doing it my way. We're just going to end up with this robot girl." She actually calls her robot girl. He's going to end up with robot girl getting killed.
Right. I did like, by the way, that she has she's guessed that he's Tal Shiar, effectively at this point.
All this appearance of Tal Shiar being such a major part of this story has me thinking, are we really not going to get Sela again? Sela, how do you say that? Sela. It seems like she's in the Tal Shiar, right? Shouldn't she crop?
She's not in the Tal Shiar.
Wasn't she?
She was in the military.
Okay. Well, they wear the same uniform, but all right. So maybe that makes more sense. So,
I would like her to show up.
Yeah.
What did y'all think of their hallway grease slide?
I thought it was fun. I thought it was we've seen these two people are slowly falling in love done so many times. This was a fun, different way to see it.
I was okay with it, except for Narek going "Ooh!" when he's sliding down the hallway.
See, I liked it because he shouldn't be doing that.
Right. It's the kind of thing, kind of giddy, dumb stuff you do with someone you're in love with. So it makes some sense.
My interpretation was he's doing something really stupid, but maybe that's a normal thing for Romulans to do.
I mean, maybe it is. But the impression I got was that he, in his duplicity, wanted to convey a level of exuberance that he does not outwardly show most of the other times. It's this is just for you. Only with you would I have this kind of unabashed enthusiasm. It was their equivalent of ice skating. But of course that scene ends with her getting pissed at him, so he didn't... is that also where he revealed that the thing about her records?
Yeah. That's what pissed her off.
Right. Okay. So he actually did accomplish what he wanted out of that.
Yeah, because he kind of called her a liar when he pointed out there wasn't a record of you on this ship. And she tells him to go to hell, and what I thought was kind of a awkward line delivery.
Yeah. And then he goes back to his quarters,
she should have said, "Just go fuck yourself" or something like that.
That would have been a good use of it. He goes back to his quarters where his naughty sister shows up.
Yes, we get some clandestine Romulan fuckery again.
Feckery.
Feckery.
She got kind of abusive in this one, though. She straight up strangled his ass for a few seconds.
Yeah, I think there might have actually been some dick grabbing under the covers.
Oh,
at this point, I'm really hoping that they're not biological brother and sister. They're part of maybe that's what the
Brian, you had suggested that these could be just codes for ranks and stuff like that.
Or maybe the Zot Vash, they just call everyone brother or sister.
Yeah, well, their agents are brothers and sisters. They report to grandma or father and mother. I've certainly seen that in spy organizations in sci-fi and stuff.
I love it when you call me Big Papa.
Yeah.
or it might just be when you're in a union and you have all your union brothers and sisters.
But if nothing else, they are playing with the idea of them being Lannister-like twins. And again, it's one of those things where I'm if it's not supposed to be that, it's kind of a little tawdry for Trek to be doing, to play with the audience, only to, I guess, later make us think, oh, well, I was thinking the worst, and in fact, she was just a weird superior officer who was being abusive.
The theory with the Zot Vash that I want to talk about is, what if the secret that the Zot Vash, the secret police within the secret police of the Tal Shiar, what if that secret that they've been sworn to protect for 2,000 years is the reason why they're named after the dead, because the dead are the only reliable keepers of secrets?
Mm-hmm.
What if that secret is that the Romulan origin on the Vulcan planet is that Vulcans created these biological synthetic people, and that's the Romulans. And that's why they had, like, this war with the Vulcans and eventually left, and they're trying to, like, keep that secret. And that's why, like, they're so anti-AI.
They are essentially replicants in Blade Runner, to use that kind of terminology.
Yeah, they're either, like, Vulcan replicants or
Human
Vulcan
Cylons.
Or Vulcan Cylons.
Yeah.
It's awfully close to BSG.
Well, would the idea be, though, that most Romulans don't know this, and that they, in their inner circle, considers this such a horrible thing to learn that you come from essentially synthetic stock, that it could potentially crush the spirit of their whole empire?
Maybe something like that.
I could see that. I kind of like it. It's whatever they say. I hope it's at least on that scale of bigness, because they've, the fact that the Tal Shiar and the Zat Vash are such a kind of big and deep secret thing. I feel like it needs to be something big.
And they've already started bringing in Armageddon mythology from the Romulan, not mythology.
Ganmadan?
Their Ragnarok.
Yeah, Ragnarok.
Yeah.
Which, speaking of Nordic mythology, I do want to bring up that the Fenris Rangers...
Oh, yes.
Chippendale Fenris Rangers.
Jesus Christ.
I'm just testing out different stuff.
It's better than the Soji and the Borg cube.
Okay, but Fenris from the Nordic myths was a wolf that was like a super badass wolf that was
son of Loki.
It was going to grow too large and destroy Asgard, and Tyr had to sacrifice his arm to bind the wolf, Fenris.
Do you think there's actually anything that's going to... Do you think they mean it other than just a cool name?
I don't know, like, why else you would use it.
Yeah.
But, I mean...
It sounds cool.
That does make you kind of sound like badasses, like, we're the Fenris Rangers, I guess. Now, the other connection there...
Fenris is basically the wolf who breaks every chain. And even the chain that they bind him with, he still eventually gets out in Ragnarok.
Well, yeah, but that hasn't happened yet.
It's hard for me to imagine that they mean for that mythology to really come through and have any sort of stronger, bigger metaphor, or that it's a thematic lead up to something. But maybe.
Now,
since Armageddon is at least in the air.
The other connection that we might have here, if we can cross streams and go into Greco-Roman mythology, which does kind of have a tie to the Romulans, with their planets being named Romulus and Remus. Now, those are named after two sons of Mars. Another god of war, like Tyr.
Yep.
And Romulus and Remus, they were raised by, like, a mother wolf who, like, nursed them.
Yep.
And then that kind of ties into, like, Soji and Daj and what we heard last week with Rom just saying, are you the one who lives, you're the one who dies? Because Remus died, and that's why Rome was named after Romulus.
Right.
Instead of Remus.
I think, if nothing else, they wanted to, I think, have a little sort of thematic resonance with this. I had thought about that a few weeks ago, the Romulus-Remus connection and the founding of Rome. But, like, I don't know, like, are these going to be the founders of something? Founders of a new movement? The founders of a new Romulus? The Romulan movement does get a lot of talk there, and if it turns out they're synthetics, and that somehow gets broken to the Romulan people and they have to deal with it, well, what if, who's the one on the Borg cube? Soji. If she becomes the founder of a new Romulus or a Sojulus or whatever.
But she's the Zaneb. She's the destroyer.
The destroyer of their old world. It could be a metaphor.
But I'm still not sure. Like,
destroyer of old preconceptions.
Why would they have a prophecy predicting all this?
I don't really like these kind of prophecy type things. But if you're not going to bring in like time travel or something,
Star Trek would never do that.
But Picard's already had a prophetic dream.
We don't know if it was a prophetic dream.
Yeah, we don't know for sure.
We dreamed about Data, and then a bunch of Data stuff happened.
Right.
Yeah,
and some of those, the cards and stuff may have meaning or may not. That may just purely be thematic resonance, meant for us, we viewers, to kind of enjoy it, but not literally meant to be. Picard is a precog. But there's enough tissue here that I could see them running with that that Romulan mythological quality if they wanted. They could tie it into things if they wanted.
Yeah. If there are like accurate predictions of the future, I would like there to be some explanation. Even if it's like, like an ancient Romulan computer predicted all of this has happened before and will happen again. To make it even more BSG. So, I'll just move on into what we're no longer calling Easter eggs, but from now on we shall ever call Gorn eggs.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Star Trek Picard Episode 3. But these are all the things that I noticed in this episode that we haven't discussed yet. Starting all the way back at the beginning of the episode in the prologue when Zanny says that Picard is not overly fond of children. This ties into what we know from Picard dating all the way back to Encounter at Farpoint, but certainly mentioned throughout Star Trek The Next Generation that Picard is not good with kids.
Yep, I was glad to see that mentioned because it does. It's probably the one of the bigger examples of character growth for him.
It felt odd to me that this Romulan knew that. Is she, especially since we know she's not a Tal Shiar.
I could imagine back in the day, they're like,
how famous was Picard's anti-kid thing? Did he kick a bunch down the stairs?
They knew each other.
Refugees.
She knew Picard. They might have known each other for a few years at this point. And also, if everyone has to talk to you with absolute candor, you probably get to know people pretty quickly.
Yeah. Also, there was a lot of refugees there. I'm imagining he had to deal with kids, and maybe he pawned some job off at some point on somebody else, and he's like, I'm not good with children.
The book that we mentioned was The Three Musketeers, which also showed up in Star Trek when we saw Lieutenant Reginald Barclay doing some shenanigans in the holodeck.
Yep.
Where Picard, Geordi, and Data appeared as the Three Musketeers.
Yep.
We see Picard fencing with Elnor in the prologue, which we also saw Picard gearing up to sword fight Guinan back in Iborg.
Yeah.
Dr. Girardi and Chris Rios mentioned that the only holo content on the ship is Klingon opera. We, of course, know that Worf is a big fan of Klingon opera.
I'm thinking he had a Klingon boyfriend or girlfriend on the ship who put all in. That's why all that's there.
He certainly didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah, that was my read from... I don't want to talk about that.
When we hear that door chime on the holodeck, Picard barks, "Come!"
Oh, yeah?
Just like he would do it in the ready room if
Old school.
If someone knocked on the door. Picard uses the Romulan greeting, Jolan True, which we heard in Unification, the Season 5 TNG episode with Spock. This was a really cool thing that I didn't notice till the second time I watched it, and I actually had to check online to see if other people had caught this or if I kind of imagined it. But when Narek and Soji are about to go do their Borg traditional ice skating down a greasy hallway.
Yeah.
She does this little tick where she tilts her head real quickly. Like
Data style?
Brent Spiner would do his Data all the time.
Did not catch that, but that's kind of nice.
Yeah, I like that little visual reminder. But this is Data's daughter.
Yeah.
Also in that Narek and Soji sequence, they appear to be drinking blue liquid in their lunchroom, which I'm going to assume is Romulan ale.
It's not just looking like Romulan ale. The bottle looks like the one McCoy brought to Kirk in Star Trek 3.
Star Trek 2.
Star Trek 2, sorry. In Star Trek 2. And I was like, oh wow, it's not exactly, it's really close to being the same type of bottle with this very fancy top. And that made me realize, okay, I guess retroactively, that must be the actual Romulan bottles that they keep their Romulan ale in. That wasn't just McCoy put it in some other bottle or something. Because the other glasses from the movie era Star Trek looked kind of like they could have come from the same set as that bottle, so I assumed it was a Federation bottle, but no, clearly a Romulan bottle. Nice. That was my favorite Easter egg.
That's how you know it's the real deal from across the border.
Yeah.
Like an imitation
if it's got that funny top
from across the neutral zone.
So yes, that was my favorite Easter egg.
Narek points out that the ship that brought Soji to the Borg cube was the Ellison. I'm going to assume that's named after Harlan.
Yeah.
R.I.P.
Yeah, big sci-fi authors might get ships in the future,
Yeah, that also works in the Kelvinverse, where we had a ship named after...
Bradbury?
Is it Radbury or Bradbury? Bradbury.
Yeah, is that what I said?
Yeah. Bradbury. And I'm sad that Harlan Ellison is no longer with us, but I'm glad that we can put little tributes like this to him in Star Trek and not worry about him suing anybody.
Right. If nothing else, there would be angry backlash as he very much burned his bridges with Star Trek. Read all about it anywhere you want, but there's fun tales from behind the scenes.
I thought about saying something about that. I thought, no, I'm not going to go there. Oh, they're going there.
Now, the Romulan ex-senator who loses his head with Picard and Elnor.
Yeah.
See what I did there?
Don't lose your head.
But he talks about a Wallenberg-class transport, and I think this is probably named after Raoul Wallenberg, who was a Swedish diplomat who helped save a lot of Jewish people from the Holocaust in Hungary during World War II.
Nice.
And that Wallenberg-class transport was named the Nightingale. We also got a Nightingale-named ship in Star Trek Voyager in the Season 7 episode, which I think was also called Nightingale, where those aliens on the little medical ship really like Harry Kim, and they want to make him their captain, and he renames the ship Nightingale.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like, finally, people who appreciate me. They don't have to be an ensign anymore. And, of course, the bird of prey that we've already gushed over. That is all I got for the Gorn eggs, but if there's anything I missed that you caught, be sure to let me know. You can comment on YouTube, tweet at me on Twitter, or hit up our Facebook page. And if you do that, feel free to mention anything about this episode, and we might share that feedback in our next podcast. Because right now, we're going to do the same thing for last week's episode. So, Dave, what did we receive on the subspace transmissions?
Let's take a look. Boat Trek writes, I get that people will always have bad habits, but the vaping and cigar smoking bothers me, despite the excuses Chabon offers to justify it in the series. For those that didn't see, Michael Chabon did a little 5-minute, slightly snarky response to some of the criticisms, and I suggest everybody watch it, even if it's going to make you mad.
It's on Instagram, and I thought they were actually pretty valid explanations.
Yeah, it did make me... I didn't understand why this woman was so broken after working with Picard, but then he explained she was broken before, and Picard was kind of helping her hold herself together, and then when Picard left, she went back to her old ways. I was like, okay, so Picard didn't break this woman. All right, that makes more sense.
All right, so Dan Gunther writes, talking about this was the episode that notably concluded with the attack on the vineyard where Laris and Chabon went ballistic. He writes, really enjoyed it, especially on the second viewing. Lots to dissect in this episode. I wonder how many more Romulan bodies will be piled up at the vineyard when Picard finally returns. Laris and Chabon are phenomenal.
Yeah, I was a little worried about just like leaving them with the Zot Vush, knowing about them on their vineyard.
I mean, they're not just going to keep coming back once they know Picard's gone,
I was also like, I think those two will be fine. They can clearly take care of themselves.
Lily Stregdor says, I thoroughly enjoyed it. However, I'm now wary to trust Dr. Jurati. I like her, but O did something sinister, in my opinion. For sure, it was odd that they didn't show what was actually transpired between them. I think that's got to come back at some point.
Yeah, for all we know, that Jurati is an android built by Maddox, and she like murdered O right when that happened.
I mean, maybe.
Oh, wow. I hadn't thought about that, but wow. Okay.
Jude Beacom writes, now that we've finally met our hero ship, I will not be satisfied unless this season concludes with the La Sirena and the Enterprise F teaming up for a balls-to-the-wall space battle against a giant, grinning F8. F8?
Like Fate, or F8, the synthetic that started the attack on Mars.
Oh.
Second episode flashback.
Giant grinning.
You're thinking literally a monstrous version of him?
Yeah, but like when there's
Down for
like
it.
a giant F8 head in space, and he does like that weird Inhuman smile and goes, hell yeah!
Then I'm down for it. He was one of the more memorable threats the show has shown, and they flashed back to him several times, so hell yeah, I'm into it.
He's the secret final boss of the season.
Alright, meanwhile, over on Facebook, Adam B. Owen says, loved it. Rio seems like a very interesting character. We see more of his emergency holograms and their various personalities and accents. What a cool little exercise for an actor to play a variety of roles. I also loved his conversation with Picard telling him, "Your Starfleet," which tells us a few things, namely that both Picard and Rios may have a story arc that brings them back into the fold, believing in Starfleet again. That'll be interesting to see.
We saw a little hint that they still kind of have those Starfleet habits, to where Picard gave Rios an order, basically, to change course, and Rios just obeyed. Like, oh, Admiral says we gotta go here, I'm going here.
Yeah, she was kind of poking at him for that. Michael Woolman says, Rios mentions he's an expensive pilot. What's he getting paid in? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought we were past the point of money. I've seen this come up, like one or two friends mention this, too.
Yeah, we should be. I wish they would just stop talking about, like, money on Earth, altogether, because that's kind of what we know from past continuity, but it has been mentioned before.
Yeah.
Even this very episode, he mentioned it again. I'm
kind of okay with him deciding he wants to be paid, but I would like to know, if we're going to go there, then we kind of need to know, where did Picard get the money? What is he paying him in?
Well, there's off-world currencies that you might need if you're in business other places that aren't on Earth.
Yeah. So, if you're going to bring up he's getting paid, I think you do need to bring up how are they paying him? Because, as you say, I don't think Picard's got a bunch of cash lying around.
I mean, it's gold press latinum. It's the one and only main currency we know.
What is Picard doing with a bunch of gold press latinum?
There's other currencies mentioned in Star Trek.
I know, it's just it's the iconic one. Maybe the most iconic. Yeah. By the way, this was a separate post, but Adam B. Owen also says, I gotta wonder, where is New Romulus in all of this? Where's their government, new homeworld? Can't imagine the Romulan Empire is that splintered considering how vast it was. It would be interesting to see some reference or representation of what their empire looks like now, if it is an empire, and if the loss of Romulus Remus has tempered some of their duplicity or only made it worse.
Yeah, and we have heard mention of the Romulan Free State, which owns the Borg cube, I guess, but now we also know about the Romulan Rebirth movement.
Yeah.
Which kind of sounds like it might be like a more like ethnocentral, nationalistic type.
For sure, yeah. That is absolutely what they're heading
type of
towards.
Thing.
I assume that's what the armbands were for when Picard beams down. I mean, they don't explicitly say that, but that's my assumption.
Your Romulan only crowd is the Romulan Rebirth movement, I think, is what we can infer.
Mm-hmm.
And presumably wanting to rebuild the Star Empire as a conquering body once again.
This is kind of similar to what the Star Trek Online game has done, where they have again, keeping it Roman, they have the Romulan Republic, which forms after the destruction of their homeworld. But they also have the Romulan Empire as a separate group who's trying to maintain the old ways, and they're kind of spearheaded by the Tal Shiar.
Interesting, yeah. So you have Empire v Republic.
Yeah.
I wonder. I don't think they're gonna this doesn't feel like a series that wants to get too much into geopolitics or galactopolitics.
Galactopolitics.
Yeah.
Well, that is one of the things I wanted to know about.
But they're up against it. It's definitely revealed on the, it may be revealed sort of on the side. In any case, that's all I've got from the mailbag this week.
So we will go ahead and be signing off, but be sure to check us out Sunday when we discuss the upcoming episode Stardust City Rag, which will again be directed by Jonathan Frakes.
Nice, and it's going to have 7 and 9.
Yeah, and also Canto Bite, apparently.
Yes.
But we'll see you then, and until then, as always,
live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek, and follow Fatheree on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you and take care.